What about legality? What's something that's what in your mind when you hear about legal? What does that come up to in your mind? Yes.
Rules that are set by the government
Sure.
of the country that you live in.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah. So besides the rules by the government, are there any other kind of idea of legal? Think about legalistic. Think about being legal. Sorry. Yep. Scribes and Pharisees. Okay. Yeah. Very good. So
I was just thinking about this.
Yeah. Well, of course, we'll leave it till Wood and Marianne to bring it back to spirituality. So yeah. Yeah, the scribes and Pharisees were very legalistic. The letter of the law, right? The letter of the law was more important than the spirit of the law, right? So now we've just touched on something else, which is that the law is not just the letter, but there is a spirit. There is a purpose to the law, right? And what Jesus did throughout his ministry was to tell the people that you guys got the purpose all wrong, right? And the true purpose is this, and the true purpose is that, and that's why it was the way that it is, okay? So, I have a question for you, and the question is, can there ever be a tension between something that is moral and something that is legal? Is there a tension? I see people nodding heads, but no hands are raised. So go ahead. What's your name? Moret, go ahead.
Moral can come up from upbringing and the way we were raised, faith. Whereas legality can, it's kind of more set in stone.
Okay.
So they could differ in terms of each perspective.
So even the source, right? So the source, like Micheline was saying that, the law will usually come from a government body and so on, and Moret is now saying, well, there's a distinction between the source of law and the source of morality, which may come from upbringing or how you're raised. Anybody else? Anybody? Yes.
Actually, I was going to I'm thinking that values doesn't have. It's the fact that they do not. We all do not have to agree on the same values, because sometimes there is. I have a certain background, certain upbringing, so sometimes even the biblical values, sometimes we could interpret it differently or apply it differently. And I guess the same with the law. It's about interpretation. How do you interpret the law? What is you reading? Like it also triggers in Jesus when he says to the rich young ruler, what is your understanding of the commandment? So this is to them, the 10 commandments was the law of Moses and the 10 commandments. They're just commandments. So what is your interpretation of the law? So sometimes we could have the same text, but maybe different interpretations.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Again, that's how I make my living, right? It's the various interpretation of the law or various interpretation of the facts, right? And Abuna raises a very good point that even biblically, right, there can be some variations on the interpretation. And actually, that's a very good point, because that actually brings us to the second part of our discussion, which is, I think, going to be great. And you'll see that there is a tension even between the church fathers, how they interpret certain morals or certain values. Okay. I wrote down, is it always legal to be moral? But I remember we had a tough time with that question. So, do we have to follow the law? Yes. Anybody else?
If you don't want to.
Melissa. So sorry, Micheline, you wanted to add to that?
I was just gonna say, if you don't want to go to jail or.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Right? If you don't want to go to jail or get a ticket, so on. Right? There are consequences to breaking the law. Melissa.
I feel like I heard this on a radio show one time, talking about morality versus law, and it was something around
do? If you had a starving baby, right, and you had no money, and there was a fruit stand there, and you can take that fruit, give it to your baby, baby lives, what would you do?
Well, when it can cover his ears.
No, don't worry. This is a safe space today. Yeah, what would you do? Of course.
Life or death for my kid.
Sure. Why not? Anybody else? Because we're going to get into these situations.
I was just going to say I'd probably steal 5.
You steal 5. You take a little for you too, all right? Sure.
Make it one big time. One big steal.
Right? But that's besides the tension there between, do I save my baby's life by breaking the law, which is a very extreme kind of an example, right? The law itself has something called mitigation. Mitigation is where, okay, I have broken the law, but are there any circumstances that can apply that allow a punishment to be less severe, or perhaps no punishment at all, right? In our justice system, guess what? Kids, young adults, right, or youths, anybody under 18, is charged under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, right? And they'll steal. They'll take a candy bar, they'll do this, they'll do that, whatever it is, right? But the system, the philosophy of the Youth Criminal Justice Act is not to punish, but is to rehabilitate. It's more focused on rehabilitation. So yeah, maybe they'll have to write a letter of an apology, right? But then they won't get like a youth record, for example, right? But even for adults too, they have something called diversion, right? Where if you commit smaller crimes and you own up to it and you accept some of the facts, right, perhaps, right, they may dismiss the charge and after you do some community service hours, for example, right? So there is this thing called mitigation because obviously, right, the government cannot prosecute every single offender, right? That's just, the police can't be everywhere, the courts can't punish everybody, so there's mitigation there as well. So that was a very good point that you brought up. What if it's an unjust law? Can there ever be a law that is unjust?
Yes.
Okay, why?
It depends on the leaders who's putting the law in.
Does it depend on the leaders?
Yeah,
Okay, why?
because sometimes the leaders have different values and can put unjust laws.
Okay, so here, what Joe did is he conflated again the values and the law. So again, the values, the society's values will inform the laws, right? So for example, we value personal property. That's why there are laws against stealing, theft, right? We, as a society, we value life, right? That's why, or a person's integrity, right? So that's why there are laws against assault, there are laws against murder, and so on, right? We value having, safe roads, right? That's why there's all these different rules of the road, and then there's criminal offenses such as, making sure that you're not intoxicated under a drug or alcohol while you're driving, right? And I'm in the presence of esteemed counsel, by the way, so, I'm just gonna take some license here today, but feel free to jump in at any time. All right? Okay. He's just a civilian today, is that what you're saying? Okay. Are there any examples that you can think of in the Bible about breaking the law?
Can you repeat the question?
Are there any examples in the Bible that you can think of that are about breaking the law?
Adam.
Yes.
Moses broke the law, that's why he had to die.
What law did he break?
I think he got angry. I'm not too sure.
Okay, but was that a law or was that a command from God specifically for him?
Well, a command from God is the
Yeah.
law.
Well, is it? Right? Did it apply to everybody else? No, it only applied to Moses. Yeah. Right? But that is an example, right? When we break God's command, that's breaking the law. You're right? Because God is the author of the law in the Bible, right? Any other examples? What about the New Testament? Yes, sorry.
Well, Jesus offended a lot of Jews by breaking the law.
All the time. the time, right? They hated him for breaking the law. They didn't hate him for making, they were jealous of him for doing the miracles and having all this power, but they really hated him because he broke the law. What are some of the examples of that?
When he
Sorry,
healed,
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
when he healed some people on the Sabbath.
When he heals on the Sabbath, right? And that, like, sorry, I'm gonna get to Abuna's point, was a matter of misinterpretation of the law. Exactly, right? Sorry.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. I could say that he did not break the law, but he broke their interpretation of the law, not the law. So
that's a very good point, right? So now Abuna is saying that actually this isn't breaking the law because they didn't know what the law really was, right? Any other examples? Judas. What about Judas?
He broke the law.
How did he break the law?
He betrayed somebody.
So betraying somebody, is that breaking the law or?
He sold the Son of God for gold.
So what? But so what?
it's more of a
What is
moral-
that? Yeah.
Maybe it's moral value.
Right? You don't sell out your friends, right? And you don't literally sell them out, right? You don't actually sell them for, he gave them information, where he's going to be, what he's going to do, right?
Okay, that's interesting. Is there a law against betrayal?
No, there is not. There are laws on.
Isn't this a shame?
It can be, yeah. It can be, yeah. This was definitely a moral dilemma that Judas Judas
if you
had.
take Judas's case, it could be conspiracy.
Yeah, conspiracy to commit murder, sure. Yeah, why not? Yeah, because he's participating in a criminal act, sure, right? What about? So I think one of the more interesting Jesus moments of the law and morality actually happens when there is the prostitute who was caught in the act. Okay? And who can just give us a little bit of a rundown of that story? I'm not going to read it from the Bible, just give me a summary. Yes. Come on. No? Anybody? Sorry, in our family, if you touch your nose first, that means you're not going to say anything. Yes. Anybody? Come on, guys. We've read the story a million times. Shadi, come on. Hook it up. What's the story of the prostitute who was caught in the act? What happens to her? Anybody, guys? Yes. Sorry, what's your name? Danny, go ahead, Danny.
Essentially, the woman did what she did, and by law, she was supposed to get stoned.
Yep.
So the Jews wanted to stone her.
Yep.
And Christ came in, he was like, no.
Right? He basically said no, yeah. That was the best summary I've ever heard of this story. Exactly. Right?
But I'm guessing it does not serve your purpose.
It can. We'll make it work. We'll make it work, Danny. Don't worry. So not only does he say no, but he says something along the lines of, all these people have picked up stones, ready to stone her to death because that's what they are supposed to do, right? And then they're looking at him. What are you going to do? Are you going to pick up a stone? And he says to them, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So he really says, okay, yeah, you brought somebody that's committed a crime or committed a sin, right? Fine. You want to condemn her? Fine. But if you want to punish her, let him who doesn't have any sin throw the first stone. And when what happens? Well, they say he stooped down, he started writing in the sand, he took pictures of that. But the bottom line is everybody dropped their stones, right? But who wasn't, or who was without sin?
Our Lord Jesus
Christ. So who actually should have been able to stone her? Christ, right? Christ himself. He actually had the moral authority to stone her to death, right? But instead he tells her what? Go and sin no more, right? He lets her go. Right? So sometimes there's something that we like to do called moral superiority, right? where because of my morals, the way that I conduct my life, the way that I conduct my behavior, I get this sense of entitlement that I have moral superiority, right? And we know from Christ's example that that's not a very good thing, right? But guess what happens every day? And I'm not talking like stoning, somebody for prostitution. What about social media? What about social media now, right? You do one thing and there's thousands of people stoning you, right? Hundreds of people. Oh, how could this mother have done this? Or, how could this person have said something so bad? There are people, I just read yesterday, one of the kids from the parkland, so in Florida there was a shooting and whatever, and one of the kids had actually gone into Harvard. He wrote this great essay, he was a great guy, whatever, and he got into Harvard, right? And somebody found a post that was considered racist that he had done 4 years before. And Harvard withdrew their acceptance, right? Because now we live in this, believe it or not, everybody says our morals are tarnished and we're living in this crazy world where you can do whatever you want and this and that, whatever. But we actually right now I would suggest we actually living right now in a very messed up world that has nothing to do with what people are doing, but has everything to do with how people are reacting to what everybody is doing, right? So moral superiority. All right, we're going to get into some very quick, issues. We won't do that one. We won't do that one. Okay, here we go. Let me ask you a question. Can it?
What page do you want me to be?
No, we'll leave that for a second. Can it ever be right to have an abortion?
Oh, God.
What do you think?
We're not going to ask the regulator right now. No, I'm joking. Mitch. Anybody? Go ahead, Mitch, please. Start us out.
I think yes.
That you can?
Yes.
All right. Anybody agree or disagree? Yes.
There are some cases where abortion where the baby's dead or there's something with a child that's not going to live.
Right.
Or some defect or the mother's in danger.
Or the mother's life is in danger.
So these are cases with abortion.
Yeah. Okay. Very good point, right? So we're saying yes because there are some circumstances, right? Like you mentioned, there is the life of the mother could be at stake, right? There could be an issue with the fetus itself, where it's just abnormal and it's not going to be viable anyways, right? Anybody else? Does anybody else have a different opinion, or does anybody want to play devil's advocate? I can't hear you. What?
I definitely have a different opinion.
Okay. What is it? Go ahead.
Well, I don't agree that abortion is ever only for the mother's life.
Only for the mother's life.
Only for the mother's life. But
Okay.
the basis of your question, you have to define when does life start.
That's a very good point, right? But if your definition of when life starts at any point in time, is there a certain point in time, no matter what your definition of life is, that an abortion is absolutely not right? Sorry? So your view is life starts at conception, so therefore, at any point in time, it's wrong except for if the mother's life is in danger.
Yes.
Okay, so why the mother's life and not the baby's life? Why is the mother's life more valuable than the baby's life? Yeah, that's a good sign. Right? Because that's
I can't say it. I don't want to get into it. That's why.
No, get into it. It's okay. But the point is that you and others, right, make a moral judgment about not only the conception of life, right, but the value of life, right? You're assigning a value to the life, right? Because at one point you said, well, if it's the mother's life is in danger, then the mother's life takes precedence over the baby's life, right? So there is some kind of weighing that's happening, okay? Yeah, sorry.
There is also how are you building your values and your morals that help you come up with this decision. Like it could be the value of life, it could be what constitutes another option would be, who am I to decide life or death?
Very true.
So having, again, I'm adding maybe a spiritual component, that the person who owns the life is the person who has the right to give or to take life. And from a spiritual perspective, again, that's why it depends on how do you derive your moral value. Who is the owner of life? I would say God. So this is God's choice. If He wills this or that, it's his choice.
It is. And the even from a spiritual perspective, you have, the Catholic Church, which is absolutely not, no circumstances. There was even in the U.S. right now, there's a lot of states that are passing laws that are banning abortions almost outright, even in cases of incest, cases of rape, cases where the mother's life is in danger even, right? And even if there are exceptions, they are so narrow and so hard that it basically makes any abortion impossible to have. Luckily for us, right, our church, and Labuna can correct me if I'm wrong, but our church...
We're like the Catholic Church.
We are, yes, of course. We place a very high emphasis on the baby, on the embryo, on the human life. But ultimately, it's a decision that happens between the family and their father of confession, right? They take a decision, or they can take some guidance from the father of confession. At least that's what I was told. I don't know. See, even that is
the thing is, we do we do not have a clear stance. This is it, because it's case per case basis.
Yes.
But my understanding that the ultimate fact is, who's the owner of life?
Yes.
And regardless of the situation, the owner of life. Of course, I'm not taking away from anyone's choice, but I cannot say this is right because this is right for you. Like, for example, the stealing because my baby is starving. I cannot justify, well, this is correct action because my baby is dying, but I would say, yeah, it's okay, but it doesn't make it right. So you made this choice, it does not make it right. If I decide to end a life of a baby, in my opinion, it does not make it right because I have a valid reason, because I'm going to have many valid reasons that allow me to rationalize taking away life.
The like Abuna was saying, right, that the church doesn't exactly have, like, this precise.
It is not accepting abortion. It
doesn't.
It is for whatever reason,
Yeah.
regardless of the reason. This is my yes.
Question.
Okay. Yes.
Two things I don't understand, and I don't understand how by the way, I feel for anybody in that situation, women who've been
Of course.
raped or abused, or they're in a situation like that. So that's extremely tough. But I don't understand how there isn't a definition as to when life starts, and you were suggesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's defined by whoever has the baby in them or someone else, or it could be when the heart starts beating, or this or that, or at conception. But come on.
You may I don't know. I don't take a position.
Yeah.
I have no idea. When life starts is like a massive undertaking that I could never begin to even start to
I don't think anybody knows, but anyways, the other thing is, when I think about a baby potentially leaving the world before it's even born, that could have been any one of us. That's how I look at it.
Of course.
That's an opportunity lost for somebody, and that's taking their opportunity without their choice or say. I often think about these situations, and again, this is why I said the first thing I said was it's a very difficult situation for the woman, because it's easy for me to say, put the child up for adoption. They won't know. but it's often a matter of I don't even like talking about this.
Yeah,
This
it's
is,
tough.
Like I always say, like put the baby up for adoption. Baby didn't do anything, you know. But
yeah, that's another way to take.
But a lot of people don't.
Look at it.
And I feel for them when they make that decision. Like, you know.
Well, I mean,
it's a tough
I'm
decision.
not. The point of this isn't to try to get like, you know, the right answer, or to try to like work like this meeting today, July 11th, we're gonna solve abortion. No, that's not. It's not the purpose of this, right? The purpose of this is to get us to think about issues, right? So, you know, if the mother's life is in danger, is that a situation that, you know, if there's a value of the life or whatever, does the mother's life take precedence? Does it take? Hold on. The next question I had is, what if she has 2 other young kids at home, right? Then is the mother's life more valuable than the kid, than the baby, whatever it is, right? Hold on. So the number of situations that people find themselves in, right, are infinite, right? We don't know, but the wisdom of our church, right? The wisdom of our church, right, is that yes, we have our morals, we have our values, like, you know, and like Abuna was saying, like we have the compassion and the prudence and the wisdom to say, yes, we understand that you stole something, right? But it was because you were hungry. You had no option. You had, you know, I would never tell you. I would never, you know, condone stealing, for example, right? But I might get in a little trouble with what comes next.
Can I add?
Yes.
I just want to clarify and maybe second what you and Yusuf said, that this does not by any means take away that it is a dilemma. It's not an easy situation, and maybe that's the question. I don't know what I would do if I am put in this situation. At the same, so I'd like to have 2 lenses. The lens is the lens of compassion, meaning not because something did something that according to my standards are wrong, it means I take away compassion. At the same time, the other lens, I have to have the clear, as much as possible, standard or guideline. I heard a very nice analogy that you cannot get a torchlight and put it in your face, meaning the truth. But I have always to keep it before me so that I could see. Meaning, if by the same concept, if he is without sin, should not cast a stone, then basically we're gonna scrap away all the justice system, because everyone is with a violation.
Yeah.
But
we have to have anarchy.
But we have to have accountability. So it's the balance between accountability and compassion.
And that's the key word: is balance, right? Is balance, is prudence, is wisdom, and that's really what this conversation is really about, right? And we'll skip that. Okay, how about this? Can it be right to drink alcohol? Is it right? Is it wrong? Really? Why not? Why not? Why not?
In moderation.
In what?
In moderation.
Thank you. Let's end the discussion there, because that's exactly right. Because, and here's the thing, guys, if I could do one good thing tonight is I will ask you to, who has a Bible app on their phone? That's it? Okay, first everybody else download the Bible app to your phone. Second, download the Catholic version of the Bible. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that is because the Orthodox version isn't on there, usually not in mine. But if it is on yours, download that one, but I doubt it. But sorry? Coptic Reader? Coptic Reader, yes, Coptic Reader has it as well. So Coptic Reader has the Orthodox, so if you have Coptic Reader, you've got the Bible. The full Bible.
The Deuterocanonical?
The Deuterocanonical books. And there is actually a beautiful, beautiful book called Sirach. Sirach, okay? This book is like I would suggest, is the very first self-help guide to life. Honestly. It's insane. It talks about everything. It talks about how when you're at a guest house, don't eat too fast, don't eat too much, don't chew too loudly, because you don't want to come across as a greedy person. I know. Why is it in the Bible, right? But you got to read the whole thing. It's really long, but it's beautiful, and it's just amazing. And I try to make it a habit to try to read it once a year, at least one time a year. So in Sirach, chapter 31, verses 25 to 31, the title is Temperance in Drinking Wine. And it says, do not aim to be valiant over wine, for wine has destroyed many. So don't look for it. Don't try to be valiant, over the wine. Let's make it a party, whatever. Fire and water prove the temper of steel, so wine tests hearts in the strife of the proud. Right? So basically they're saying if you're not a good person, you really shouldn't drink, because all that ungoodness is going to come right out. And we all know that, because we've all experienced that, right? But then it goes on to say, wine is like life to men. What? Really? Okay. If you drink it in moderation. What is life to a man who is without wine? It has been created to make men glad. Wine drunk in season and temperately is rejoicing in heart and gladness of soul. And we know that, right? We know the properties of wine. We know the properties of alcohol, right? That it's supposed to lower your inhibitions and whatever. But if you drink too much, it lowers your inhibitions too much, right? But the point of it is to be a part of merrymaking, right? Then it goes on to say, wine drunk to excess is bitterness to the soul, with provocation and stumbling. Drunkenness increases the anger of a fool to his injury, reducing his strength and adding wounds. Okay? And that's just very straightforward advice, right? You don't want to be around a drunk, right? You don't want to be around somebody who always wants to drink, right? And if that is your predisposition, then perhaps you shouldn't be drinking, okay? And I'm not saying this so that you can all go out and have a drink, okay? That's not the point of this. But another piece of advice comes right after. It says, do not reprove your neighbor at a banquet of wine, and do not despise him in his merrymaking. Why is that there? Why? Can anybody tell me what that means? Anybody?
Don't judge.
Sure, don't judge. What else? Yes.
Don't be a party pooper.
Don't be a party pooper. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Don't be a party pooper, right? And if somebody's trying to have a good time, okay, that's not the time that you start telling them you're this and you're that and start a problem with them, right? Because everybody knows that if, there's alcohol around, right, you may get into a fight, right? It's just very practical, beautiful advice, right? Speak no words of reproach to him, and do not afflict him by making demands of him, right? Now's not the time to start badgering them and whatever. If you're at a party, don't be a party pooper, okay? All right. Mind-altering drugs or scrap. Okay, here's the part. Let's get to these beautiful church fathers, okay? And we'll skip this criminal defense stuff. That's okay. All right, because this is the part that we kind of missed last time. So if you guys have a handout in front of you, right? I want to know first, before you start reading or before we start going through it, is it ever okay to tell a lie?
Yes.
Yes?
What's that
Is
again?
it ever okay to tell a lie? Is it ever okay to lie? To be deceptive? It is? You're saying with a big smile on your face, and in fact, there's a story behind that one.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
If Alia comes to you and says, do I look fat in this?
Absolutely, she does not. Never, ever, right? Yeah. Okay, I will lie. Absolutely. Actually, okay, I'll tell you a little bit of insight into our marriage. Me and Alia love to cook. I know you know that because we used to do the kitchen at Aeroland. And she likes to try new recipes. And she's a very good cook, by the way. She's very good, and she makes great food. And then she made something that just did not taste good, right? And so she asked me, she's like, do you like this? Is this like a make again? I said, honey, no, this is really bad. It's got this wrong, it's got that right. Just please don't. And then she's like, come on, man, like you're supposed to tell me it's good, even if it's bad. Like, come on, what kind of a husband are you? I said, woman, I gotta live with you for the next 55 years at least, right? I want to at least eat a decent meal, all right? That's all I'm asking, all right? So now we have an understanding, right? Where it comes to food, we're not gonna be offended, and we can be truthful with each other, all right? But absolutely, right? Obviously, right? That if and you'll be surprised at the number of questions that a wife will ask you, or the things that they'll say, sometimes they'll say I don't feel pretty, or this or that, or whatever, and they could just be waking up and they're the most gorgeous person in the whole world. Believe me, you want to say that every time. This is not the cooking example. This is you need to keep your marriage alive example. All right? So, anybody else? White lies, any white lies, any good lies, any good deceptive? Or is it always you have to tell the truth? Anybody? Yes, Melissa.
If you attend a meeting or like a conference and your boss is there and like, oh, so what did you think? And she organized it and it was really boring. You're like, it was great.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so there you go. And that's because you want to keep your job. Absolutely. Okay? Right? But also, what kind of? But the important thing you said is that your boss put in effort, right? Your boss put in the effort, and you don't want the whole point is to be brutally honest. Say, you know what? It was boring. It was this, was that, because you're demeaning their effort, right? But what you're really trying to do is to give value to their effort, right? In whatever way you can. Anybody else? Okay. Let's get on because we want to wrap things up soon. So, like we said from the very beginning of the meeting, St. John Chrysostom, they called this man the Golden Tongue. He can convince anybody about anything. He is such an important figure in our church. He wrote books and homilies. Another tip, orthodoxebooks.org. orthodoxebooks.org. I believe that's the right site. That has a slew of PDFs, okay? Lots of books by Pope Shenouda, Abuna Tedros, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of church fathers as well, and among them, St. John Chrysostom, okay? He writes about several, the book of Matthew is maybe 100 pages. His explanation on the book of Matthew is 1,072 pages, okay? If you ever have any kind of interpretation issue, or you want to understand something, or you read something that you're not really too sure about, you can, and he divides it into homilies, chapters, verses, goes into it, and it's very, very beautiful. If you get stuck, or you want to give a lesson, or whatever, I highly suggest you go to St. John Chrysostom's interpretation on the different books of the Bible, okay? Now, St. Basil, him and St. Basil, right? St. Basil the Great, the one who we use his liturgy, almost every liturgy, right? They were both celibate, and they were both serving in different areas and whatever, but they were really best friends. They were really best friends, okay? So then word got around that they wanted to ordain them to the priesthood. And when I say they wanted to ordain them to the priesthood, they really wanted to make them bishops, okay? So what happens is St. John and St. Basil, they have a meeting, and they're both buddy, okay, we've talked about it, we've discussed it, we're going to do it together, okay? We're going to both go to this place at this time, we're going to meet each other, and, the people will take us and they'll make us bishops, and we'll just have to bear whatever the responsibilities of being a bishop are. Except St. John does a little side deal with the people and tells them that they're actually meeting St. Basil at this place instead, and he doesn't show up. So what happens is they take St. Basil, make him a bishop, and St. John gets away. St. Basil, he's not mad. Okay, I can't say that he's mad. Even he says, I'm not really that mad, right? He's not mad, but he is hurt. He's really, 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 really hurt. He's like, how could you do this to me? You're my best friend. We talked about this for months. We promised each other. You gave me, like, the bro code. We said we were going to do this together, whatever. And you totally betrayed me. You lied to me. You deceived me. You just left me hanging. Okay? And just to see how beautiful and simple he is, just right off the bat where he says, for I do not demand any account for the wrongs which I have sustained at your hands. So here you'll see Basil, and then you'll see St. John. So they're both kind of it's like a conversation that they're having, right? I do not demand any account for the wrongs which I have sustained at your hands, nor for the deceit or treachery you have practiced, nor for the advantage which you have derived from me in the past. For I placed my very life, so to say, in your hands. Yet you treated me with as much guile as if it had been your business to guard yourself against an enemy. Okay? These are pretty harsh words coming from St. Basil. This is the man that says, oh God, the great, the eternal. Like we read his beautiful words every liturgy. And here he's just slicing St. John. He's like, I'm not even going to say I need you to tell me that you were wrong or whatever it is. But I placed my life in your hand. You totally just crushed me. Okay? And I don't want to really get into too much or whatever it is, but if we go to the second paragraph, thanks. Thank you. Right? Nevertheless, where was it? But all these things I pass by and bear in silence and meekness, not that you have acted meekly in transgressing against me, but because from the day that I cherished your friendship, I laid it down as a rule for myself, that whatever sorrow you might cause me, I would never force you to the necessity of an apology. Oh my God, wow. This guy is basically saying, from the day we met, the day we became friends, I made it a rule that I would never require an apology from you, right? But you were not meek with me, and you were not nice to me, but he's really, really hurt, okay? I'm just trying to bring out some of the parts. If we can go to 3, to that bolded part. So yeah, next page if you guys have it. Right, and then in this kind of part, he's talking about how good it is to have friends and this and that, whatever. Then he says, beware that we do not by separation incur much ridicule and damage worse than ridicule. Brother aided by brother is like a strong city and a well-fortified kingdom. Do not dissolve this genuine intimacy nor break down the fortress. Such things and more I was continually saying, not indeed that I ever suspected anything of this kind, but supposing you to be entirely sound in your relation towards me, I did it as a superfluous precaution. So he's saying, he's reminding you of the conversations they had. They're like, listen, we're brother and brother. If we do this together, we'll be stronger together, like this and that. He's like, I said all these things, never thinking that you would actually betray me. Okay? So this is crazy. These are friends. It's beautiful. Okay, let's go up a little bit more. And then we get right up to, let's go right up to 5. Let's get St. John right up here. Okay? So, now St. John Chrysostom is replying for the first time, right? He says some nice things here, whatever, but then here's the part that we want to get to. Can we just put it up a little bit more? After thanks. Just right up, because we need 6 and 7, okay? And he says, what is the wrong that I have done you, since I have determined to embark from this point upon the sea of apology? Is it that I misled you and concealed my purpose? Yet I did it for the benefit of yourself who was deceived, and of those to whom I surrendered you by means of this deceit. For if the evil of deception is absolute, and it is never right to make use of it, I am prepared to pay any penalty you please, or rather, as you will never endure to inflict punishment upon me, I shall subject myself to the same condemnation which is pronounced by judges on evildoers when their accusers have convicted them. So right away, he's saying that if deception is an evil that's absolute, which he's going to say he doesn't think so, but if that is the case, and I know you'll never punish me, I will punish myself. Okay? But then he goes on to say, but if the thing is not always harmful, but becomes good or bad according to the intention of those who practice it, you must desist from complaining of deceit and prove that it has been devised against you for a bad purpose. And as long as this proof is wanting, it would only be fair for those who wish to conduct themselves prudently, not only to abstain from reproach and accusation, but even to give a friendly reception to the receiver. He's basically telling him, right, that what I did was such a good thing. You should actually be thanking me. You should actually be saying, you know what, John, I get it. You know, you totally deceived me. You shouldn't be hurt, but you should be thanking me, okay? But the important thing that he's saying is that he's basically saying that if deception is not an absolute wrong, right, then it is something that depends on its intention and whether it's used prudently, okay? And you got to be very careful, because I'm not advocating that from now on everybody goes out and just starts lying their faces off and lying about everything and you know, false testimony or whatever. Like that's not the point, okay? I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, which I'm sure you are. But then he goes on to say, for a well-timed deception undertaken with an upright intention has such advantages that many persons have often had to undergo punishment for abstaining from fraud, okay? So what he's saying here is that a deception at the right time with the right purpose, okay, has an advantage that could prevent you from harming somebody, or even harming, I don't want to say harming yourself, because it's not a selfish thing, right? But let's just keep it at that for the other person, okay? And then he goes on to talk about, I'm just going to go very quickly, in paragraph 8 and 9, he says, take a look at history, right? Take a look at war, right? If a general doesn't use deception, a lot of people could die, right? There's lots of strategy that is used, right, for war. There's a lot of deception that's used for war, right? And it actually will save lives if the other side or the enemy, right, is deceived and thinks that the other side is stronger or is winning the battle, and then they run away, right? Okay, let's go on. Number 10. This is the key, okay? And not only in war, and not in war only, but also in peace, the need of deceit may be found, not merely in reference to the affairs of state, but also in private life, in the dealings of husband with wife, and wife with husband, son with father, friend with friend, and also children with a parent. Come on, that's got to be amazing, no? Right? He's basically saying, right, that it's that there is in peace, right? Even when there's no fighting, when there's no war, even the dealings between a husband and wife, in the family, even between friends, right? Their deceit is a tool, okay? I'm not, again, this isn't about like, you know, that gives me license to start like, you know, cheating on my wife and lying about it, and like it's okay. John said I could lie, so that means I could lie to everybody. No, that's not the point. That is not the point, right? The point is that there are, like, you know, my son is 2, okay? I have to make a decision of whether Santa Claus exists or not. And not like Saint Nicholas, who we worship or we venerate and whatever, like the actual saint, right? But like, you know, the guy with the red suit and the beard and the presents, like, what are you going to do, right? But what's the purpose of that, right? Is the purpose of that to tell him that there is this like stranger that comes into your house and gives you presents and because it's Christmas? Or is the purpose of that to connect it to the actual story, the actual Saint Nicholas, right? And to say that he actually did exist and he actually did give presents and did that, right? But it's setting them up, right? What about the tooth fairy? What about the Easter bunny, right? What about if they're scared, right? What if they're scared? I would, have to tell him, Habibi, don't worry. There's angels everywhere surrounding you. I don't see angels, right? I know I don't. I know I want to believe that there's angels everywhere. I don't actually really believe it because I would be a very different person walking around, right? But there's a purpose. There's a purpose, right? And it's not a deception with a bad purpose, right? And you guys are mature. You guys make decisions all the time. You guys have to make judgment calls all the time, right? So the point of this is that, it's not about that it's okay to lie, but it's not always okay, like Abuna was saying, to shine the light in the face, right? Because what happens when you put the light in the face? It's like, right? Okay, let's, okay, so St. Basil's responding. He's like, but none of these things apply to me. I'm not an enemy. Was not trying to hurt you, but to the contrary, I entrusted you all my interests to your judgment, always followed it whenever you bid me. So he's saying, I'm not, don't even try to bring this whole enemy thing, this war thing. I'm not your enemy. I put my life in your hands, right? And we just go up, and he goes, and that's why I said that it's not just about in war or statecraft, but also in peace and in dealing with our dearest friends. Okay? Let's go up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Okay, stop. So this is actually, if you get a chance to read it, 15 and 16, is a really, really, really cool example that he gives. And he says, one of the biggest deceivers are doctors, okay? And the reason why is that in this example that he gives is that there's this really, 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 really sick man. And all he needs to do is drink water. The man refuses to drink water. He will not drink water. The only thing the man wants, who is going to die, is a glass of wine. Crazy, right? The guy wants a glass of wine. And if he drinks a glass of wine, it will definitely end his life, right? Maybe that's why he wants a glass of wine, right? And no doctor is able to convince this guy that you can drink your water. Except this other doctor comes by and says, okay, I got an idea. What he does is he takes the glass, dips it in wine, empties it, and then fills it up with water. And then he closes all the curtains, so it's dark, right? And the man who's on the bed, right, smells the wine, says, okay, finally, somebody brought me what I wanted, and just guzzles the water down, right? Because he's just so, he really, really wants to drink it, right? And by that deception, right, the man was healed, okay, right? So again, it's a tool, okay? And then he goes on. And then he goes on to say, sorry, actually, I'm just going to get you to go. After he gives this doctor example, just a little bit down, a little bit down, a little bit. It says, do you see the advantage of deceit? And if anyone were to reckon up all the tricks of physicians, the list would run on to an indefinite length. So, moral of today is that doctors are really bad deceivers. No, I'm just kidding. Right? But back then, that's what they had to do. Right? They didn't have well, your blood sir says this and that, whatever, right? But they employ these practices to save the patient. And he says, not only with the body, right, but also with the soul, right? And then he gives a good example about St. Paul. If we can just go a little bit further down.
Sorry, there we go.
Yeah, right here. And then he talks about a bunch of examples in the Bible, St. Paul in the New Testament, and then Phineas and Abraham in the Old Testament. And basically he's saying that we wouldn't judge Abraham as a child murderer, right? Think about it. He really literally took his child and was going to go and murder him to sacrifice to God, right? And did Abraham tell Isaac what he was doing?
No. No,
of course not, right? In fact, at the very last moment, Isaac's like, okay, Dad, the wood is here, the altar's here, the fire is here, where's the sacrifice? right? It's just like, hey man, what's going on, right? But we not only acquit them of blame, but we admire them because of these things, since even God commended them for the same. And remember the story of the unjust steward, which is a great story in the New Testament. For that man would fairly deserve to be called a deceiver, who made an unrighteous use of the practice, not one who did so with a salutary purpose. And often it is necessary to deceive and to do the greatest benefits by means of this device, whereas he who has gone by a straight course has done great mischief to the person whom he has not deceived. Right? So just a little bit further, that it is possible then to make use of deceit for a good purpose, or rather that in such a case it ought not to be called deceit, but a kind of good management worthy of all admiration. It might be proved at greater length, but since what was already been said suffices for demonstration, it would be irksome and tedious to lengthen out my discourse upon the subject, and now it will remain for you to pave whether or not I have not employed this art to your advantage. Okay? And then St. Basil says, and what kind of advantage have I derived from this piece of good management, or wise policy, or whatever you want to call it, so as to persuade me that I have not been deceived by you? And that's where your handout ends, but I just thought this was great. I love his response. He's like, you want to call this good? Like, he's really upset. He's really angry. So I just want you to see that they're actually like real people, right? But the point here, right, is something that Jesus says, right, where he talks about being shrewd. And that also comes from the parable of the unjust steward. Which is in chapter 16 of the gospel. I don't remember which gospel it's in. I apologize. But can somebody help me with that while I look up something? Sorry, I think it's Luke. Yeah, I think it was Luke. But here's basically just a very quick nutshell is there's this steward. A steward is somebody who is like, easiest way is a manager, right? He's the manager of like an entire operation of this guy's property, his business, his whatever, right? But he's an unjust steward because he's not really good at his job. He's doing really poorly, and he's taking advantage of his master's stuff, basically, right? And word comes to him that, buddy, you're going to get fired in a couple of weeks, right? So what this guy does is he calls all the people that owe his boss money, right? He says, how much do you owe? He says, 100. He says, okay, write down 50. Here you go. How much do you owe? 200. He says, okay, here, write down 80, and you go. So he's giving them big discounts, whatever it is, right? But the story doesn't end with Jesus being like, what a terrible person this guy was, okay? But the story ends with the master commending the unjust steward, right? Because the steward is basically saying, what do? I'm not going to, I can't do manual labor. I'm too ashamed to beg, So he gives these people discounts so that I can be received into their houses. And there's a whole spiritual, aspect to it about, your material possessions aren't really yours and you should give it away because that gives you treasure in heaven and so on, right? But the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. So it's actually a criticism of Jesus, right? Basically saying, the people in the world, they're acting a little more shrewdly than the people who believe, right? And we want to be acting shrewdly. Christ also says, be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves, okay? And who knows what the word shrewd means, or has a definition? Okay, I do, because we're running out of time. We're 10 minutes over. I apologize. The definition is having or showing sharp powers of judgment. Okay? And where can we refine our powers of judgment? Read Sirach. You'll love it. I promise. It's a great book. Okay? And I really, really hope that this was of some kind of benefit and not harmful to anybody. And I really pray and hope that all of us can be shrewd and to practice good judgment and to use wisdom and prudence in our dealings. okay? That's the most important thing. It's not always about trying to be right. It's about being wise. It's about being prudent. It's about being shrewd, okay? And that will serve you well, all right? I thank you very much for having me. I really wish that I can come, not in a speaking role, and to attend and to share in this beautiful meeting like a long time ago. Yeah, sure. Yeah, find the time for me. I'll do it. But I love this. Like I said, I love this meeting and the retreats and everything. And it's just I pray that it continues to be a big success for the glory of His holy name.